On this Monday night, Israel's growing ground assault in southern Gaza. As critical supplies run out, Palestinians say they have nowhere left to run.
We're tired. This is enough.
And why some Israelis are calling for their prime minister to quit.
They don't think of Gazans as human beings.
Minimizing methane emissions, Ottawa's new plan for the oil and gas industry. Bad news for Canada's public broadcaster. Hundreds laid off at the CBC. And that runaway roo is now back at the zoo.
Incredibly grateful that this thing was able to be caught.
How police finally apprehended this slippery marsupial.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Palestinians in southern Gaza are running out of places to escape Israel's growing ground offensive. The Israeli military has called for mass evacuations in Khan Yunis, where thousands have taken refuge. Some residents say areas they were told were safe are now being hit. Since Israel's war in Gaza began, around 16,000 Palestinians have been killed. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry, including 6,600 children. The head of one of the few functioning hospitals called the situation catastrophic, citing a lack of clean water, food, and medicine. And the sudden surge in population in southern Gaza means even fewer supplies to go around. As Crystal Goomansingh reports, the new phase of the conflict comes as Washington calls on Israel to show restraint, and a warning some of the images in this story are distressing.
You can barely see the small body amongst the large men frantically trying to free it. What is visible, 2 bare feet and tiny legs in black pants, Global is blurring because of the disturbing nature. It's not known if the child survived. This is Rafah in southern Gaza, where Palestinians have been told to go, told it would be safer. There is no safe area, neither Rafah nor Khan Yunis or Gaza. They are all liars. A new phase of the war is underway, according to military officials, one that includes southern Gaza as Israel pursues Hamas.
We will operate in maximum force against Hamas terrorists and infrastructures while minimizing harm to the civilian that Hamas places around them as shields.
Gaza is small, roughly 41 kilometers long and about 12 kilometers wide. As Israel conducts military operations by air and on the ground, there's little space for the estimated 2.2 million people to go. Look here, there's no resistance here. Not Hamas, not anything. We are just women in the house. The early morning strike on Khan Yunis reportedly killed 2 people. The force of the blast left a car scarcely recognizable as it's been compressed with other wreckage. Khan Yunis is the second largest city in Gaza, and with bombardments, injured patients flooded Nasser Hospital once again.
Protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative.
Strategic, Lloyd Austin says, because Israel, which has America's support, could end up driving Palestinians into the arms of Hamas. People are on the move again following Israeli orders, but with no idea of where to find safety as Israeli forces conduct operations across Gaza. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Families of Israeli hostages held by Hamas are demanding a meeting with Israel's war cabinet. Those families gathered in Tel Aviv, calling on the government to prioritize the release of their loved ones. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also fighting a legal battle. His corruption trial resumed today. It was put on hold following the October 7th attack by Hamas. Netanyahu is the first Israeli Prime Minister to be a criminal defendant. He denies any wrongdoing and claims to be the victim of a carefully orchestrated political plot. Daniele Hamamdjian reports from Jerusalem on the calls for Netanyahu to step down.
They want him out of office and behind bars.
After 16 years, they say Benjamin Netanyahu, known as Bibi, is unfit to serve this country for many reasons. Michal Genizov is a Canadian Israeli. She says Netanyahu has been prime minister for most of her life.
I'm so ashamed that they represent me. They don't think of Gazans as human beings, I don't think. And I am terrified of what will happen in this war if they stay in control.
We're outside the Israeli parliament, where protests are held several times a week.
They're shouting things like Bibi has blood on his hands, that he's a liar, and that he's a danger to the state.
It's a small but noisy crowd. On the other side of the barricade, the crowd is even smaller, with one man standing defiant.
First of all, I think Israel should occupy Gaza. I think the Palestinians in Gaza should go. I think we should have a population and move the population to other countries.
Once on the fringes, calling for the forced displacement of Palestinians is now the kind of rhetoric normalized under Netanyahu.
He actually believes that he is the Messiah, that he is the one that saves Israel, and there is something about him. No one can replace him. We are saturated by genocidal incitement.
A deal with ultra-nationalist parties with openly anti-Arab lawmakers is what keeps Netanyahu in power. Together, they form the most right-wing government the state of Israel has ever known. Since October 7th, one minister suggested to nuke Gaza. Another member of parliament called for a second Nakba, implying the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Earlier this year, while on trial for corruption charges, Netanyahu unveiled a plan to overhaul the judicial system. That triggered months and months of mass protests. The fear that power would be concentrated in the hands of just one man. Among those who took to the streets was Yael Alon, but she's here today for a different reason.
You lost your father in the War of 73 and your son in the War of 2023. What is your message to the government?
They have to go home. They fail, a big failure. They're responsible for what happened.
You holding them responsible for the death of your son?
Yeah.
There is a kind of understanding here in Israel that whatever political implications and backlash is in the cards will only erupt when the war is over. So that is why he has an interest to prolong the war.
The longer the war, the longer Bibi will likely remain in power. Daniele Hamamdjian, Global News, Jerusalem.
Global Affairs Canada confirms another Canadian has been killed in the Israel-Hamas conflict. The government says the victim was in Lebanon, but offered no further details. Ottawa says 7 Canadians and a person with close connections to Canada have been killed in the fighting since Hamas attacked. Another Canadian is still missing and is believed to be held hostage in Gaza. Thousands of demonstrators gathered on Parliament Hill for a rally in support of Israel. Among the speakers was the mother of Alex Look, a Montreal man killed when Hamas attacked the Nova Music Festival.
Today, we want to channel this immense pain into a call for action.
Supporters call it a show of strength against rising anti-Semitism. Many in the crowd also demanding the release of the remaining Hamas hostages. And also in Ottawa, Canada's largest Muslim youth group is hosting a multi-faith gathering tonight called Voices for Peace. Dozens of leaders from Jewish, Muslim, and Palestinian groups are attending. In New Brunswick, Moncton City Council is reversing a controversial decision to not allow a menorah and nativity scene outside City Hall. The menorah has been lit up there for 20 years. The decision to end that tradition upset members of the Jewish community. Today, Moncton's mayor apologized, saying the city wanted to be more inclusive, but that it obviously fell short in that transition. A menorah lighting ceremony will take place on Thursday evening when Hanukkah begins. The federal government has unveiled a new plan to cut methane emissions from the oil and gas sector by at least 75%, an effort to support cleaner energy and climate action. Canada's Environment Minister made that pledge at the UN Climate Summit in Dubai. Abigail Bimman reports on the regulations and reaction.
We're now aiming for at least 75% reduction.
75% fewer methane emissions by 2030. Canada unveiled new draft regulations about how to get there and promised $30 million for a new methane centre of excellence focused on tracking and reporting.
The accuracy and understanding of how much and where methane is emitted and that is reported properly is critical to achieving methane targets.
Methane emissions largely come from either leaks or venting and flaring, gas released into the atmosphere when oil is pulled from the earth. The draft regulations target both.
Every molecule of methane packs a much greater greenhouse punch than carbon dioxide.
Climate experts and advocates welcome the announcement, but they're also watching for how it will be implemented and believe better tracking and reporting through the new centre are key.
Those calculations are notoriously inaccurate. They tend to be very slow to update. And as we're in this phase of rapidly changing methane emissions, hopefully, they're just inadequate.
The governments of Saskatchewan and Alberta are already pushing back, with Alberta's premier calling the new regulations costly, dangerous, and unconstitutional. While the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers declined an interview, saying in a statement, an overly complex and prescriptive regulatory framework can add delays and higher costs, making it more difficult to rapidly implement technologies and processes that drive emissions lower.
If we are going to achieve our 1.5 degrees targets, this is the way to do it quickly and efficiently. It's not that costly, and it has a huge impact.
Canada's announcement brings our country in line with the U.S. and at the climate summit in Dubai, a coalition of 50 oil and gas companies globally pledged to reduce methane emissions even further, 80 to 90% by 2030. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
A well-known pro-democracy activist from Hong Kong says she's fled to Canada and is unlikely to return. Agnes Chow says her personal safety and mental health factored into her choice, which she announced in a social media post. She added that she won't return to the city to meet her bail conditions. Chow was arrested in 2020 under Beijing's national security law, which was enacted after anti-government protests in 2019. Hong Kong's National Security Department strongly condemned Chow's decision. Major cuts are coming to Canada's public broadcaster, some effective immediately. The CBC and Radio-Canada, its French language arm, plan to slash about 10% of the workforce. It amounts to about 600 positions across the organization, with a mix of union and non-union jobs. 200 additional vacancies will not be filled. The CBC says it's dealing with a $125 million budget shortfall. Those changes will take effect over the next 12 months. Thousands of people across Quebec are without power after the first major snowstorm of the season. Close to 30 centimeters of snow fell in Montreal today, causing chaos on the roads. Multiple flights were either delayed or cancelled, and several schools across the province were forced to take a snow day. And many kids across Nova Scotia also took advantage of a day off. Environment Canada issued a snowfall warning for that province, with up to 25 centimeters expected in some areas. Nova Scotia Power says its crews are responding to outages affecting around 20,000 customers caused by the heavy snow and high winds. From ice and snow to molten lava. Coming up, the deadly volcanic eruption in Indonesia. That is Indonesia's Mount Merapi erupting in the distance. The volcano, located on the island of Sumatra, is one of the archipelago's most active. Merapi is spewing thick ash clouds 3 kilometers into the air, blanketing surrounding villages. It's believed 75 people were on the mountain when it started erupting yesterday. The bodies of 11 climbers have been recovered and 49 people have been rescued so far. More than 40 eruptions in the last 24 hours have slowed search efforts. Farah Nasser on the work to find the missing.
Zafira Fabrina cries to her mother for help. The 19-year-old was on a hiking trip with friends when Mount Merapi suddenly erupted on Sunday. Dozens of rescuers have been taking turns carrying survivors down the mountain through thick brush. They're also transporting the bodies of the 11 climbers who didn't make it. Crews say it took 6 hours to recover the body of one of the victims near the crater. Most are still there. 12 climbers are still missing, says the head of the local search and rescue agency, including the brother of this man. He says his brother was separated from friends and sent him a video saying he couldn't walk anymore. Officials say not everyone who climbed registered, so many more could be missing.
Indonesia has the largest number of active volcanoes in the world.
Professor Glyn Williams-Jones has spent much of his career climbing and studying them.
When we're looking at a volcanic eruption, you're looking at temperatures on many hundreds of degrees Celsius, exploding out really like a bomb going off. And so it's not surprising that there were fatalities.
Merapi's deadliest eruption in 1979 killed 60 people. Since 2004, the volcano has been erupting every 2 to 4 years. Those brave enough to climb this weekend didn't think they would witness the latest one. Farah Nasser, Global News.
So long, Sinclair. Still ahead, a look back at the legacy of Canada's brightest soccer star. Christine Sinclair is on the pitch today, preparing for an important match in Vancouver tomorrow night. This is her final practice before her final game with the women's national team. Neethu Garcha reports on the BC athlete who became Canada's biggest soccer star and one of the greatest of all time.
She has more goals than any other player, male or female, in the world. She's represented Canada with so much respect and pride and leadership.
190 goals, more than 330 international game appearances, and 23 years later, Canadian soccer legend Christine Sinclair is hanging up her cleats. On Sunday, she walked into the Vancouver Stadium, which will be renamed Christine Sinclair Place for one night in honor of her final game for her country.
This is her last practice.
Some of my best memories of playing youth soccer was on that field. And now to know that I'm finishing my international career on that same field is kind of surreal. It's kind of come full circle.
She deserves just to go out in full glory, and we are all so excited for this.
Sinclair encouraged young women to get involved in the sport and has fought for equality, including pushing for pay equity on Parliament Hill.
Equal to men. Every chance that a guy gets, I want a girl to get. We're moving in the right direction, but at a very slow pace.
Sinclair was 16 when she made her senior debut for Canada in March of 2000. At the time, Canada's youngest ever player. As she gets set to retire at 40, the provincial government has proclaimed December 12th as Christine Sinclair Day in British Columbia. After a game against Australia on Tuesday, her career will come to a close, but teammates say her legacy will continue for generations. Neethu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Mike Drolet. After a weekend in the Oshawa outback, a roo on the run is back in captivity. I'll explain more coming up on Global National.
Welcome back. A kangaroo that kick-started a wild goose chase in Ontario has been captured. It got the jump on its handlers last Thursday during a pit stop en route to a Quebec zoo. For over 3 days, the marsupial mystery dominated social media with every reported sighting. Mike Drolet reports on the tale's hoppy ending.
Oshawa's most wanted is back in the zoo. This is the only picture of the high-risk takedown. 2 police officers and 1 kangaroo who didn't go quietly.
One of our officers will punch him with base by him, but they'll be okay.
The roo hunt began last Thursday when its handlers, who were transporting it to a facility in Quebec, stopped at the Oshawa Zoo for a break.
They were trying to unload her into our warm facility, and unpredictably, it jumped over them and got away. It ran across the road into farm fields, and at night, This thing is very, very difficult to find.
It didn't take long for people to report sightings. Paul Rellinger was driving his son to school.
And he goes, yeah, it is hopping. I go, that's a kangaroo or a wallaby or something similar, right? But I go, what? Why is it? What's going on?
Others saw the 60-pound female speeding alongside the road.
He's fast.
Red kangaroos can reportedly reach a top speed of 70 kilometers per hour, far faster than Cameron Rada.
Come on, get him. Get him.
Who tried to catch her with a giant net.
We got to be about within 5 feet of it before it was able, and as soon as it got past us, that was it.
Toronto has seen its share of animals on the run over the years. None more notorious than Bonnie and Clyde, the capybaras that eluded capture for over a month back in 2016. And a few years before that, a monkey wearing a shearling coat was found roaming in IKEA. With temperatures dipping below freezing in the Oshawa outback, zoo officials say they're thankful the wayward marsupial was only gone for a long weekend.
I'm both flabbergasted and incredibly grateful that this thing was able to be caught.
You know what they say, Durham police always get their marsupial. Mike Drolet, Global News, Oshawa, Ontario.
And that is Global National for this Monday, and we'll stick with the animal theme, but the domesticated kind. For all you pet owners, we want to see your furry friends decked out in their most festive outfits. Send your photos to viewers@globalnational.com, and we'll air the best ones on Christmas Eve. Good luck to all you cats and dogs. Kangaroos need not apply. Thanks for watching. Donna will be back here with you tomorrow. Have a great night.